Rihanna Walton stepped out of her towering office building in the heart of Manhattan. The afternoon sky was dimming, the city lights flickered on, and the crisp air brushed against her skin. Her mind was still occupied with the numbers from the high-stakes meeting she had just concluded, business projections, expansion plans, and ambitious goals to take Walton Corp to new heights across continents. She was the embodiment of success, young, beautiful, and incredibly powerful. Yet deep inside, there was a void, an emptiness she could never quite understand. She had everything the world had to offer: wealth, intelligence, influence. But peace remained elusive. As she walked through the bustling streets, something caught her attention. A sound distinct from the chaotic noise of the city. It was a melody, foreign yet strangely soothing. It didn't belong to the honking cars or the chatter of pedestrians. It was something else, something otherworldly, wrapping the air in a serenity she had never felt before. Curious, Rihanna frowned, her gaze searching for the source. Her steps instinctively led her to a modest building at the street's corner, a small mosque standing in stark contrast to the towering skyscrapers around it. The entrance was open, and before she could even think, her feet carried her inside. Rihanna was not someone easily swayed by things like this. To her, religion was nothing more than an illusion, something people clung to out of fear. But there was something about that voice, that recitation, that unsettled her in a way she couldn't ignore. Inside, she saw a young man standing before a gathering seated cross-legged on the floor. His presence was calm, his voice unwavering, and each word he spoke carried an undeniable conviction. Rihanna quietly took a seat at the back, listening intently. The young man was speaking about life, the search for meaning, and true peace. Each sentence felt like it pierced something deep within her, something she had long buried. She didn't believe in God, yet his words felt strikingly reasonable. For the first time in her life, she felt a desire to listen, to understand. As the sermon ended, the congregation gradually dispersed, leaving the mosque one by one. Rihanna remained seated, her eyes fixed on the young cleric. Her heart was racing, not out of fear, but because of an overwhelming curiosity she couldn't shake. It was as if something far greater than herself was tugging at her, challenging her to seek answers. Finally, she stood up and with unwavering confidence approached the young man. She looked him directly in the eye and said, "You speak with such confidence. I wonder if you can answer my questions." Her tone was calm, yet there was a tension beneath it. The young cleric met her gaze gently and smiled. "Islam does not fear questions," he said. "Ask whatever you wish." Rihanna crossed her arms, studying him intently. She had stood in countless boardrooms, defeating opponents with sheer logic and intellect, but this was different. Her opponent wasn't a corporate executive or a scientist. It was a young cleric, exuding an unshakable tranquility. "All right, let's begin," she said firmly. "I don't believe in God. I believe in science, in facts. If God truly exists, prove it through something real, something I can see, touch, or test in a laboratory." The young cleric Hassan smiled knowingly. "Tell me, Rihanna," he said, "do you believe that the universe operates under fixed laws, like gravity, thermodynamics, and planetary motion?" "Of course," she replied without hesitation. "That's the foundation of science." Hassan took a step closer, his gaze sharp yet kind. "And do you believe these laws simply exist on their own? Or do you think there is a force that governs them?" Rihanna hesitated. She disliked such questions because they forced her to consider something beyond materialistic reasoning. "These laws exist as part of nature's mechanism," she finally said. Hassan nodded thoughtfully. "If we see a skyscraper, we know there were architects and engineers behind its design. If we see an advanced car, we acknowledge the presence of a designer. So why, when we look at the universe, infinitely more complex, do we assume it came into existence without a creator?" Rihanna's heartbeat quickened. His logic was undeniable, but she wasn't ready to concede so easily. That can all be explained through evolution and the Big Bang Theory, she countered. Hassan smiled again, as if he had anticipated her response. The Big Bang. Yes, you believe the universe began from a single point which then exploded and expanded over time, correct? Yes, Rihanna answered swiftly. But did you know, Hassan continued, that the Quran mentioned this over 1,400 years ago? He recited a verse from the Quran, "And the heaven we have built with our might, and indeed we are its expander." Surah Ad-Dariyat, 51:47. Rihanna stood still, her mind racing. How could an ancient book mention the expansion of the universe, a concept only proven by modern science? For the first time in her life, Rihanna Walton, the powerful self-made billionaire, felt uncertain, and for the first time, she was willing to listen. Rihanna's eyes widened in shock. She hadn't expected such an answer. Wait, are you saying that a book written in the 7th century already knew the universe was expanding? Not only that, Hassan replied, his voice calm and composed. In the Quran, Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 30, it is stated that the heavens and the earth were originally one entity before they were separated. Isn't this exactly what modern science tells us? What the Big Bang Theory describes. Rana bit her lip. She wanted to deny it, to dismiss it as mere coincidence, but there were too many such coincidences piling up. She took a deep breath, determined to challenge his reasoning. All right, suppose God does exist. If he is so powerful, why doesn't he just reveal himself? Why does he make humans guess his existence? Hassan held her gaze, his expression unwavering. Rana, have you ever seen the wind? He asked. She frowned. What do you mean? I mean, have you ever seen the wind itself? Not its effect on the leaves, not the way it brushes against your skin, but the wind itself. Rana slowly shook her head. No, but I know it exists because I can feel it. Hassan smiled. That is how God is. You may not see him directly, but you can feel his presence, through his creation, through the flawless laws of nature, through the miracle of life itself. This time, Rana fell silent. His words didn't just make sense. They touched something deep within her, something she had spent years denying. A strange sensation stirred in her heart, something she had never felt before. She inhaled sharply, unsettled. She didn't like this feeling, this sense that her beliefs, the ones she had clung to for so long, were being questioned, that something greater than herself was slowly dismantling the foundation of her convictions. But she wasn't one to back down easily. If she was going to lose this debate, she would lose with dignity. All right, she finally said, her voice softer but still filled with determination. Let's say God does exist. But what about your religion? How can you be so sure that Islam is the true faith? How do you know the Quran isn't just another book written by men, like so many others? Hassan smiled faintly, as though he had been expecting the question. Rana, did you know that the Quran is the only holy book that has remained unchanged since it was first revealed? She frowned. Many religious texts have survived for a long time. Not like the Quran, Hassan replied. If you take a Quran from America and compare it with one from the Middle East, Africa, or even China, you'll find something remarkable. Not a single letter is different. Rana was silent. She knew that many other religious scriptures had undergone revisions and alterations throughout history, but she had never considered that the Quran had remained unchanged for over 1,000 years. That's not proof that it came from God, she argued, struggling to maintain control of the conversation. It just means it was well preserved. Hassan nodded patiently. If that isn't enough for you, let's talk about its contents. The Quran doesn't just speak of worship, it also contains scientific facts that were discovered by humans centuries later. Like what? Rana challenged. Hassan met her gaze directly. Did you know that long before embryology became a field of study, the Quran had already described the stages of fetal development in precise detail? In Surah Al-Mu'minun, verses 12 to 14, it is stated that humans are created from a drop of sperm, then develop into a clot of blood, then into a lump of flesh, before finally becoming a complete human being. Rahana frowned. That could just be a coincidence. Hassan smiled knowingly. A coincidence. Then how about this? Centuries ago, humans believed that when seas and rivers met, their waters mixed completely. But the Quran mentions that there is a barrier between two bodies of water that prevents them from merging. In Surah Al-Furqan, verses 19 to 20, it states, He released the two seas, meeting side by side, but between them is a barrier. They do not cross. Modern science has confirmed that this is true. Rahana didn't like to admit that her opponent had a strong argument, but the facts presented by Hassan were too difficult to ignore. Maybe Muhammad was just a very intelligent man, she suggested, searching for a loophole. Maybe he simply had knowledge that was far ahead of his time. Hassan chuckled. Muhammad was an illiterate man. He couldn't read or write. So how could a man living in the Arabian desert 1,400 years ago have known scientific facts that humans only discovered in the modern age? This time, Rahana was truly at a loss for words. She wasn't someone who was easily defeated in a debate, yet every argument she presented seemed to be met with an even stronger response. This doesn't make sense, she whispered more to herself than to Hassan. Hassan looked at her with a gentle expression. The truth isn't always easy to accept, especially when it challenges what we have always believed. But the truth remains the truth, Rana. It doesn't need our approval to be real. Rahana met his gaze. There was something about the way he looked at her. Not arrogant, not condescending, but calm and assured. It felt as if he wasn't trying to win an argument, but was simply guiding her toward something she had never seen before. If the Quran is truly from God. Rahana's voice wavered. Then why do so many people reject it? Why is the world full of people who ignore or even oppose it? Hassan took a deep breath. Because the truth is often uncomfortable. Accepting the truth means we have to change ourselves, and change is difficult. But those who sincerely seek the truth, they always find it. Rahana bit her lip. A part of her still. Rahana wanted to resist, to hold on to her old beliefs, but there was a small voice inside her whispering, "What if he's right?" For the first time in her life, Rahana felt that this was no longer just a debate. She wasn't simply confronting an argument, she was facing something much bigger than herself, something she had never allowed to enter her heart, and that terrified her. Because if Hassan was right, then everything she had believed about life, about existence, about God, would have to change, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for that. She sat still, her eyes locked onto Hassan's, her mind restless. She had questioned God's existence, and Hassan had answered her with undeniable logic. She had challenged the authenticity of the Quran, and Hassan had presented evidence that shook her heart. But there was still one thing she couldn't accept. "I admit that your answers make sense," Rahana finally said, her voice measured, "but something still bothers me." Hassan remained calm. "And what is that, Rana?" She took a deep breath before speaking. Science and religion have always been in conflict. Religion limits free thought, hinders human progress. How can you claim that Islam is the truth when history shows that religion has often been an obstacle to science? Hassan smiled faintly, as if he had been expecting this question. It's interesting how many people believe that science and religion are opposing forces. But tell me, Rana, do you know who first discovered the number 0? Rahana frowned. Of course. It came from Indian civilization. Hassan nodded. That's correct. And do you know who developed algebra and trigonometry, the foundation of modern engineering and science? Rahana thought for a moment. A Muslim mathematician, Al-Khwarizmi. Hassan's smile widened. Exactly. Islam never hindered science. On the contrary, when Europe was in its dark ages, the Islamic world became the center of civilization and scientific advancement. Muslim scholars made discoveries that laid the groundwork for modern science. Rahana remained silent. She knew there was truth in Hassan's words. History did show that during its golden age, the Islamic world was indeed a hub for scientific progress. But there was still one more thing weighing on her mind. But look at the world today. She leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. Developed nations that prioritize science tend to be more secular, while deeply religious countries seem to lag behind in many ways. How do you explain that? Hassan nodded slowly, as if he had anticipated the question. The issue isn't religion itself, but how it is understood and applied. If a nation fails to implement Islamic teachings correctly, is Islam to blame? His voice was calm and thoughtful. Islam does not oppose knowledge. It commands us to seek it. It encourages us to think, question, and explore. In fact, the very first revelation given to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not an instruction to worship or fight. It was a command to read. Hassan held Rahana's gaze, his voice steady as he recited from the Quran, Surah Al-Alaq, verses 1 to 5. Begin with the word read. The first command from God to mankind was to read, to learn, to seek knowledge. Isn't that undeniable proof that Islam not only supports science but demands its pursuit? Rahana fell silent. She couldn't refute that no other holy book began with such a direct call to knowledge. Still, she wasn't ready to concede. She crossed her arms, searching for another angle. What about the theory of evolution? She asked, her tone challenging. Science has proven that humans evolve over millions of years, yet religion claims we were created directly by God. His lips curled into an annoying smile. Many Muslim scholars have explored the theory of evolution from different perspectives. The Quran tells us that Adam was the first human, but does that mean God had no mechanism for his creation? Couldn't he have created mankind in a way far more intricate than we currently understand? Rahana raised an eyebrow. So, you don't reject evolution? Science is always evolving, Hassan replied. What matters isn't blindly accepting or rejecting theories, but seeking deeper understanding. Science is a tool. Its value depends on how we use it. For the first time, Rahana felt as though she was receiving answers that weren't dismissive or dogmatic, but rational, answers that made sense. And yet, a part of her resisted. I still feel like religion limits free thought, she admitted. Hassan shook his head. Islam never forbids thinking. It simply provides boundaries. Just as a scientist follows ethical guidelines, if you're an engineer, you know electricity can be deadly. Does that mean we should stop using it? We learn how to harness its power safely. Religion isn't a barrier. It's a guide ensuring we stay on the right path. Rahana exhaled sharply, rubbing her face. She had come into this debate intending to prove that religion was irrational, yet now she felt herself losing ground, not because she was being out-argued, but because something within her was shifting. So you believe religion and science can coexist? She asked, her voice softer now. Not only can they coexist, Hassan replied, but they must. The God who created this universe is the same God who sent down his revelation. How could they be at odds? For the first time, Rahana lowered her gaze, feeling small, not because she had been defeated, but because she was beginning to grasp something far greater than herself. Had she been wrong all along, or had she just found something she had unknowingly been searching for? She stared at the mosque floor, her mind reeling. All her life she had believed she had the answers. She was at the peak of her career, a young billionaire, a respected genius, an unshakable leader. And yet, in the span of a few hours, A humble scholar in this small mosque had shaken her world. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Hassan met her gaze, his expression calm, devoid of any triumph. "You don't have to rush, Rahana. Truth isn't something that can be forced. It must be discovered with an open heart." She lifted her eyes to his, her vision blurring with unshed tears. "What if I want to believe, but I'm afraid?" Hassan's smile was gentle. "Afraid of what?" Rahana let out a quiet, bitter laugh. "Afraid that if I believe in God, everything I've built, everything I've fought for, will fall apart." Hassan nodded, as if he understood the storm raging within her. "You don't have to lose yourself, Rahana. Faith isn't about erasing who you are. It's about discovering the part of yourself that has been missing." She closed her eyes, reflecting on the life she had built since childhood. She had believed that power lay in intelligence, in logic, in control. She had worked relentlessly to forge her empire, to command respect, to become someone who could not be shaken. Yet behind all of it, there had always been a void, an emptiness that no amount of wealth or success could fill. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she finally asked, "How does it feel to believe in God?" she asked softly, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken emotions. Hassan smiled, his expression reflecting the serenity of a soul that had found its true home after years of wandering. "It feels like finding shelter after being lost in a storm, like finally breathing freely after being submerged for so long. It is knowing with certainty that you are never truly alone." Rahana bit her lip, hesitating before asking, "And if I want to believe, what should I do?" Hassan's gaze softened, filled with warmth and understanding. "You only need to open your heart, and when you are ready, proclaim the 2 sentences of the Shahada." Her heartbeat quickened. She knew what the Shahada meant. It was not just a statement, it was a declaration, an unbreakable covenant with the Almighty. If she uttered those words, there would be no turning back. Her hands trembled as she lowered her gaze, staring at the floor as if searching for an answer. But instead she found something else, tears falling silently, unbidden. "I want to believe," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I want to feel that peace, but what if I'm not good enough? What if I don't deserve it?" Hassan shook his head gently. "No human is perfect, Rahana. Allah does not ask for perfection. He only asks that we seek Him with sincerity." Rahana closed her eyes, drawing in a deep, steadying breath. Then, with newfound determination, she lifted her gaze to Hassan. "Guide me." A tender smile spread across Hassan's face as he began to recite the Shahada. His voice was steady and reassuring. Rahana followed, repeating every word with trembling lips, until finally the sacred testimony was spoken in its entirety. "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." The moment those words left her lips, an overwhelming wave of emotion surged through her. She covered her face with both hands as sobs racked her body, not tears of fear or confusion, but tears of relief. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. After years of searching, she had finally found the truth in a place she had never expected. In the days that followed, Rahana embraced her new faith with sincerity. She immersed herself in learning about Islam, performing acts of worship with a heart full of devotion. A peace she had never known before settled within her soul. But amidst her spiritual transformation, another feeling began to blossom, a quiet yet undeniable admiration for Hassan. He was not only her guide to the truth, but also a man of wisdom, kindness, and unwavering faith. She respected him, admired him, and soon realized that she wished for him to be more than just her teacher. Months passed, and with unwavering confidence, she made a decision that would change her life once more. She approached Hassan, not just as a seeker of knowledge, but as a woman who had found the man she wanted to walk beside on her journey. When her proposal was presented, Hassan was taken aback. He had never imagined that an extraordinary woman like Rahana would choose him, but deep down, he, too, had felt a connection between them, something beyond words. With gratitude and humility, he accepted. Their marriage was an event that sent ripples through the world. An American billionaire, once known for her atheism, had now fully embraced Islam and married a simple yet wise cleric who had illuminated her path. On their wedding day, Rahana chose to take a new name, Miriam, a name that symbolized purity and steadfastness. Clad in a simple yet elegant white dress and hijab, she stood beside Hassan, making a sacred vow before Allah. That day, not only were two hearts united, but two seemingly distant worlds were brought together by faith and love. As husband and wife, Miriam and Hassan dedicated their lives to spreading goodness. With her wealth and influence, Miriam established a modern Islamic educational institution that seamlessly integrated science and religion, proving to the world that the two were never meant to be in conflict. Hassan, meanwhile, continued his humble mission as a cleric, guiding those who, like Miriam, were searching for the light of faith. Together, they became more than just a couple. They became a testament to the boundless mercy and guidance of Allah. Their story stood as a reminder that no heart is beyond His reach, and that true fulfillment comes not through material success alone, but through the peace found in submission to Him.